This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.
The TalkSport Fan Network is proud to be partnering with Lotto from the National Lottery. You know that Lotto's basically the OG millionaire maker, right? You can get involved and play every Wednesday. Crazy. Imagine you won this Wednesday's jackpot. How wild would that be? Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
At BetMGM, we know how to put on a show. So we don't just do offers, we do golden offers like this.
MGM Millions, our supersized jackpot where right now you could win over £21 million.
Get ready for the golden era in online casino. BetMGM, it's showtime.
Minimum 10p game stake. Terms and conditions apply. 18 plus. Please gamble responsibly.
And welcome to this instalment of Memories of Frank, the great Frank Worthington, as told by his friends and former pros. This episode we're looking at the Birmingham City perspective from Alan Curbishley, Joe Gallagher and Keith Bertschin. Sit back and enjoy.
Alan Curbishley, sir, thank you very much for doing this. Frank Worthington, what was your first memories of Frank?
The goal he scored against Ipswich, I think, flicking it over Terry Butcher's head and spinning and volleying it in. And the fact that he was different, the way he looked, the way he played. And obviously, when I signed for Birmingham, Jimmy Smith just took the £1 million in for Trevor Francis. I think I was the first one in after the relegation. And he said he was bringing other players in, but I wasn't quite prepared for Archie Gemmill, Colin Todd, and then Frank. It was three massive names, and when you consider we were playing in the Championship. So, no, I think that, along with the others, I think Frank gave everybody a lift at the club.
Now, when you say that goal against Ipswich, that wasn't Frank's best goal,
It wasn't, was it?
No, I've had the fortune, not being in Frank's company as often as you. You're a former teammate. But I did ask him about that goal, and he said, if you ever see Ian Gillard, ask him about the goal I scored against QPR. And in terms of Jim Smith, Jim's relationship with Frank goes back to when Frank first started playing football as a kid. And I think it was Johnny Walker, not the runner, but the bottle of scotch that actually convinced Frank to join Birmingham City. But you're right, what wonderful times. What's the first thing that you think of? If somebody said to you, Alan, Frank Worthington, what first springs to mind about Frank?
Star. I just think, when he come into the building, the way he dressed, the way he conducted himself, the way he looked, it was all class. And I think that I was 20, 21, and I'm thinking, blimey, Frank Worthington's come into the club. And for me, the great thing about Frank was his hold-up play. The fact, he had Keith running around behind him and Tony Evans and people like that. But, as a midfield player, if the ball went into him, you would gamble. You'd take a chance. You'd think he would control it. And if you went past him, he'd play you in or he'd lay it off to you. So, as a midfield player, when he come into the club, he wasn't going to run in the channels. He wasn't going to do that. But the two things he did do was his hold-up play was exceptional. And if he got given a chance, he invariably went in. So we knew we had firepower with him and Keith. We knew we had firepower to get out of that division.
On match days, quite clearly, Frank was he was the king of the road, wasn't he? It was just majestic. He didn't just make that ball talk. He made that ball sing. He was everything and anything to any football club. But what influence in the dressing room did Frank have on those younger players? Because most of the players were younger than Frank. He'd had a great career before he'd come to Birmingham and had a great career whilst he was at City as well.
Well, he was always offering advice and worldly advice, and I think everyone looked up to him because the way he conducted himself. Yeah. He was perhaps you wouldn't expect it, but he was really fit. And I think that we all looked at him and thought, we've got a chance with him in the side. And secondly, the fact that he come to the club, I think, gave everybody a big lift. Him and Archie, and Colin Todd. I mean, them 3 players. It was a massive coup from Jimmy. And, as I say, for a championship side to have that quality of player, it was exceptional.
Nights out, did you ever endure any of the infamous nights out? Keith Bertschin talks about the rum runner.
Well,
I know that
no.
you and Keith were big pals as well.
No. If there was a day off or after a game, I used to go back to London quite a lot, but I did hear about them. And I think obviously Frank was into his music. My brother's in the music business, so, we clicked on that. But I think, one thing, he asked me to pick him up to take him to a match at St Andrews. So, I turn up nice and early at his house and I'm knocking on the door and no answer. And I'm knocking on the door and no answer. I'm thinking, blimey, is he in there? So I've walked round the side of the house and I'm looking through a window and he's playing a set of drums. He bought himself a set of drums and he was playing them. And, he had headphones on, so he couldn't hear anything. So I was standing outside like the Conservative waving at him, that we had to get in the car and get to St Andrews. But, he loved his music, as everybody knew, Elvis and everything else. So, he was really laid back, but not, he was laid back in his persona and, perhaps the way he conducted himself, but he wasn't laid back when it meant, when it was business, he wasn't laid back, if you know what I mean.
It was a little bit like Elvis, wasn't it? Taking care of business, and Frank always did take care of business.
Well, he had the necklace, didn't he? He had the necklace with PCB on it and all that, and I remember we finished one season and he was going off to play in America. That's when players went off and played. I don't think it was a second season. I don't think he got a lot of football, and Jimmy said he could go to America, and he asked me if he could park his car at my house. And then while he was in America, he phoned me up and said to me, look, in the glove compartment, there's 2 tickets for Bruce Springsteen at the NEC. I didn't even know who Bruce Springsteen was. He said, I've got 2 tickets and he's doing the river, you got to go. And fair enough. I went to the NEC and saw Bruce Springsteen. He was always into his music, Frank.
Yeah, but again, off the pitch, he was just as charismatic off the pitch as on the pitch, and style as well. Frank oozed class and style. He would have looked great even in a bin liner, wouldn't he, Frank?
The one thing I remember as well is that he lived in Solihull, and I couldn't tell you what the restaurant was called.
Riverside.
No, Keith would tell you what it was called. I can't remember what it was called. But Frank would go in there, I think on a Friday night or whatever, and have his meal, and they named the steak after him. It was the Worhington steak. And it was lean, mean, and rare or something in the menu. Yeah. So not many people have had a steak named after them, I don't think.
But Frank, for all the silky skill that Frank possessed, he was hard and he was ruthless as well, wasn't he? He didn't take any prisoners, and the likes of Tommy Smith, he'd go into battle with Tommy, wouldn't he?
Yeah, no, he could handle himself, Frank. Yeah. If someone, was aggressive or done something wrong, he'd soon let them know. But I remember talking to him once, and he was telling me the Liverpool story, because he was assigned for Liverpool.
Yes, he did.
And, Bill Shankly, and it was all done, and he come to the dreaded medical, and unfortunately Frank had high blood pressure, which they took quite serious at the time, and they said to him, look, go away on holiday, relax and come back, and we're sure it'd be okay. But he went away on holiday and came back, and the blood pressure was worse. I think he must have enjoyed himself too much. But that was a big thing. I think if Frank would have gone to Liverpool under Bill Shankly, I mean, at that age, anything could have happened to him.
Well, so the thing is, with Liverpool, they did send him on holiday, but they sent him to Magaluf. And Frank said to me, fancy sending me to Magaluf. I come back worse than I went out.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The blood pressure was high when he came back, so that was no good.
But again, an absolute legend. But, the clubs that I think Frank played for 24 clubs and had fantastic times, and is a legend at all those football clubs, but never really played for what you would perceive a big club at Manchester United, or Liverpool, or one of those big clubs abroad. There was a time that there was speculation that Frank was going to go and sign for a team in Brazil, but I think he chose Birmingham and Jim Smith instead, which was great for us. But some players, they look at the medals and as supporters and journalists and people in the media, look at their medals and their honours and put your badges on the table or your medals on the table that Cloughie famously said. But that's not all that football is about. It's about those memories, and the memories that Frank gave us are far greater for me than any medal.
Well, yeah, but I think if Frank would have gone to Liverpool, or, you know, perhaps after that medical, then he wasn't going to move to one of them big clubs. But I'm sure if he'd have gone to Liverpool, he'd have won enough medals. But I think when everyone thinks of Frank, and if you ask, I don't know, you know, how many of the team you've asked, but if you ask about Frank, it brings a smile to your face.
Yeah.
You know, it was that sort of thing. You know, because he was generous, very generous. He was kind. He could be angry, as you said, but invariably he wanted to play football, and he wanted it played the right way. And you know, I just think that he was perfect for me for all sorts of reasons when he come to Birmingham. And you know, I know as you're talking, I know the fans appreciated him. But you know, as I said, when he walked into the building, for me personally, I thought we got a chance. Yeah. You know, we got a chance because we've got someone who can nick a goal, and I felt the rest of the squad could, as Frank says, could take care of business. You know, if he nicked us a goal and whatever, we'd have a chance.
In terms of his Birmingham City career, because you played with him, what was the most magical moment that you saw Frank give in a Birmingham City, that Birmingham City Adidas kit, which many of us Blues fans think is the best kit that we ever had, and I think it's the best team that we ever had personally?
Well, I'm sure it was Frank. I think with one promotion, then we're playing Coventry first game of the season, and I think a ball went up to him, and I've decided to make a run and was left alone, and I've run, and he just flicked it round the corner, and I was in, and I had a long way to go, halfway line before I got to Jim Blythe, and I've managed to go round him and put it away. And whenever I think of Frank, I think of that, because that was the sort of relationship I had with him. If it went into him, I knew I'd have a chance. Yeah. If I wanted, you know, Archie was the holding midfield player, if you like, and I was given a bit of freedom. Me and Kevin Dillon were given the freedom to get forward. And, you know, he was the perfect player for me. So whenever I think of Frank, I think of that.
And it's criminal that Frank only received, what was it, something like 8 or maybe 9 England caps. It's quite incredible, because in that game of the 70s, which in my opinion was the halcyon days of football, we had so many fabulous players, they just didn't seem to fit in to our game, but also seemed to fit into every team that they ever played for, and were legends and adored. As Jimmy Greaves once said, football is a funny old game, and it really is, isn't it?
Well, perhaps the managers at the time when Frank was playing, you know, didn't appreciate, you know, someone that perhaps had a bigger name off the field and perhaps on it, and etc. And, you know, I don't quite remember who the managers was at the time, but, you know, I think it might have been the Don Revis and whatever. So, you know, it would have been a bit tough for someone like Frank, where now that sort of player would be lauded. I think that, you know, if the money I'm seeing changing hands at the moment, where would Frank be at his height, you know?
If Frank Worthington was playing today, I asked Frank once, Frank, how do you think that you would fit into the modern game? And he said, son, great players would fit in at any time. He kicked his stool back and started singing "It's Now or Never" to me. And in truth, great players would fit into any era of football. And I think in Jim, I think he had the ideal manager at Birmingham City.
Absolutely. I think that, you know, to bring them sort of players in, Archie Gemmell, who wasn't shy, Toddy wasn't shy, Willie Johnston wasn't shy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to bring them sort of players in and have to handle them, you know, you got to realise that Jimmy was a perfect man manager, and he sort of gave us a licence. He knew he got us in and knew what we could do, and told us to go and express ourselves and do it. You know, there was never any negativity. You know, obviously he could rant and rave, but you know, he was always on about good football and playing football, and he enjoyed it, Jimmy, and I think he allowed us to enjoy it.
Absolutely, and us fans enjoyed it as well, Alan. And sadly, Birmingham City Board of Directors didn't seem to enjoy it as much because Birmingham got rid of the services of Jim Smith. I think that was the start of the decline, and Birmingham City have never done any. I don't think they've gone back up the ladder. I think from that decline, they've never really got back to where they used to be. I know under Steve Bruce they did for a short while, but not in terms of playing the football. And Ron Saunders coming to Birmingham, and I remember Frank saying that Ron Saunders was to football what King Edward was to babysitting.
Well, I think, you know, let's consider that, you know, I was there when Ron Saunders came, and I realised why he was successful at Villa. You know, you either did what he wanted or you didn't, and if you didn't, you weren't going to play. My other memory of Frank was that we had when Ron Saunders took over, we had a really big team meeting, and sort of Ron laid down the law and everything else, and we walked out to go and train at Elmdon, and he put his arm around Frank, and 2 days later he was gone, or 3 days later he went to Leeds, I think, and you know, because Ron Saunders had his way, and that was the only way. And if you didn't fit in, you know, you didn't fit in, and you know, but he told you straight. I had no problems with Ron Saunders. He told you straight, but I think he came to Birmingham on a false promise. I think we was mid-table in the Premier League, if you like, and I think because Ron resigned at Villa and was available, if you like, I mean, I think that must be one of the reasons, because we was mid-table, we weren't struggling, and you know, Jimmy had done a really good job taking the club up and keeping them up and etc. So, you know, we couldn't quite work that one out, but it happened, and obviously Ron Saunders was a totally different manager to Jimmy Smith. And as I said, if you didn't fit in, then you was going to go.
Absolutely. And finally, what's your favourite Elvis track, Alan?
Blue Suede Shoes. Because Frank always had a pair of like nice loafers or suede shoes on, you know. So yeah, blue suede shoes. I think
the fella will never ever be forgotten. He was a larger than life character. He was everything that you'd want from a football. He was a hero of mine and a former player and a teammate of yours.
Yeah, as I say, I didn't realise it had been 75. And me and Keith talk regular. We see each other quite, you know, whenever we can. So yeah, we've got fond memories of Frank.
Alan, can I thank you so much for your time, sir?
That's all right.
It's been an absolute blast. Thanks, Alan. Right. Really appreciate it. Cheers, mate. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Yeah, I'm just glad to talk about the great Frank Worthington.
Fantastic. Joe Gallagher. Gallagher. That was the chant, Joe, from the Tilton and the Spine Cup to you. And we always used to sing as well. Frankie Worthington. First memories of the great man, Joe.
First memories, well, yes, being obviously a supporter of Liverpool and things, and then I joined Birmingham City in 1970, and so a few years after I'd signed, a few years after I'd made my debut and things like that. But I always watched the news and the television and the football players, all the great players at Manchester United and Liverpool and Everton and so on and so forth. So I did follow the football, and as I say, after a few years. When I was at Birmingham, went in for this to buy Frank Worthington, and we as players, me, Kenny Burns, and Trevor Francis, and we all rated Frank was an outstanding football player. And then when Frank came, we all wanted to try and train hard and well and show Frank, how good at players we are and things like that, which is the same as whenever any sort of new player would come in. You always try and impress them to make them feel at home and so on. But yeah, so knowing Frank was I'll not use great player all the time, but he was a great player, Frank Worthington. And, watching him play, and then in playing in the team, he's a front man, I'm a defender. So, he was just an outstanding footballer. He was a fantastic player. And, strong, could score goals from anywhere. Was brilliant. His knowledge of the game as well was fantastic. So I can't speak any more highly of him. He was just a great player.
And the nice thing about talking to you, Joe, is that not only were you a former teammate of Frank Worthington, you also played against Frank, didn't you? And famously in that game against Leicester City, you played against Frank, and Frank scored against us and made the other goal, didn't he, in the 6-2 win at Filbert Street?
Yes, he did. He did score a goal. I had to mark him being a number 5, a centre back, and Frank was a striker, centre forward or inside forward. So I can't really remember too much about the game, but I know I was just happy to play against a man like Frank Worthington and against a great player, an England striker. And then Frank scored a goal. Things were, Birmingham, our heads are down. We have to try and fight back and play and try and get the best, beat Leicester City, which sadly we didn't. I think we lost. Did we lose 2-1 or something like that? That
was the game. I mean, you may well have played against Frank for Leicester City when you lost, but the game I'm looking at is on the 4th of December 1976, when it was one of the few games that was on that was played. It was televised. It was on Match of the Day. We beat them 6-2 on ice when Kenny scored the 3 goals, and we got the TR7. That was a game. Frankie scored from the penalty spot. It was you that fouled Steve Kember in the box and gave away the penalty.
Yes. It vaguely remember it. Yes, vaguely remember it. Ken and Trevor, did they both score?
Yes,
both
score
goals?
They did. Gary Emanuel and
Gary
Rolf.
Emanuel. But to mark Frank was, I was just happy that he'd only scored the 1 goal, because he was a tough guy to play against. He had this, we all knew him as a bit of a, I don't know, I can't find the words for him. He was a maverick. Maverick, that's a great word for him. He was a maverick. He was brilliant, and for Frank, he took that penalty, didn't he? And striked it home. Great player, a great player, and thankfully I only had to play against him maybe once or twice, because shortly after that he did end up signing for Birmingham, which we as players, I certainly was over the moon with having Frank Worthington in the team. Was just great guns.
What was it like at Almden training with Frank in the 5-a-side? Did you make sure that you was on Frank's side?
Well, I tried to, and we all tried to, because there was lots of other very, very good players, as I mentioned, Trevor and Kenny Burns, and the likes of maybe Alan Campbell probably was in the side in the squad. It was always a privilege to have Frank in your team, and for him to score great goals. Frank had a great left foot. He was well-balanced player. He was tall, strong, well-balanced, great left foot. and that's why he ended up scoring. Was his record something like 266 goals and 38 penalties, which is just numbers like fantastic. And of course I always remember the when Frank came, from Bolton Wanderers, but even now in the late days, they still chant his name, chant Frank Worthington's name. He was a great player, and I can't speak more highly of him. And I was just really glad that for about 150,000, was it, he came to Birmingham City, which was nothing at all to do with me or the rest of the players, but we were all just really glad that he was at Birmingham. And it was short. It wasn't very long after that, after he'd signed, I did see then right up front, that what a great player he was. And lots of players are like that. We see them on television or we hear about them, and we've seen them over the years, but until you actually play and train with a player and see how great they are, I do mention Trevor Francis and Alan Campbell, until you train with them and see them every day in training, you just realise then what great players they really are. He worked very, very hard, Frank. As I say, he had a great left foot, and he scored some fantastic goals.
Absolutely, and he come because Trevor had been sold in the February 1979.
Right.
We got the £1 million from Trevor, or a penny shy of £1 million, and Alan Curbishley arrived, Colin Todd arrived, Archie Gemmill arrived, Frank Worthington arrived. It was a new broom sweeps clean, and it was Jim's new blue revolution, and no better a manager to have there with Frank was Jim Smith. They knew each other from way back when. Frank was a lad and used to train with the professionals at the Shay at Halifax, because Jim used to play for Halifax with Frank's brothers.
Oh right, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, Paul. But that's fantastic. I had a very brief spell when I was up at Burnley, which was my last. Was it? No, it wasn't my last football club. But anyway, when I was up at Burnley, We played at Halifax's ground. Yeah, that's right. We played at Halifax's ground, and the supporters always liked Frank. Always loved to watch him. It was good days.
Well, his mum used to go there as a young un before the while the war was going on. Hitler was raiding the whole of the country, and Frank's mother Alice met Frank's dad, Cannonball Worthy, as Frank told me. He'd been released from Manchester United, so it's a love affair of football with the Worthingtons there at the Shay at Halifax. Quite clearly, Frank didn't need a nickname, because he was a massive Elvis fan, wasn't he?
He was, yes, definitely. We seen he didn't make a fool of himself around the training ground or nothing, but yes, we did hear about that. He was a big, massive Elvis fan. He was a joy. He was an absolute joy. Somebody like myself from the back streets of Liverpool, come down to Birmingham as a 15-year-old, and then eventually to play with players like that. Frank Worthington was just an unbelievable time. Great player.
And there's a wonderful picture Joe, of you, Frank, and Alan Curbishley holding up Miss Birmingham City, Maria Stevens in 1981. They were great times
yeah,
at Hello, were there.
yeah,
Birmingham
they
City
was.
were a boutique football club,
They
if you like,
was,
and
yeah,
Frank
absolutely.
brought the press, didn't he?
He
He
did,
made
yeah.
Birmingham popular.
Yes, he did. He did very much. Yeah, he had the walk. The what did he call it? The stride, and
Yes.
he was big and strong and a great looking fella. Just a joy to have him around the place. And he did. He used to train very hard. He had this. I don't know, this feeling that he wasn't. He was up front. This is in training as well. Up front, he would play and he would bang loads of goals in. But he would strut. Is that the word?
Yes,
he would strut around the pitch, and you would think, well, he doesn't really want to play. He just wants to walk around a bit, But then all of a sudden, the ball will come to him. He'll flick it here, flick it there, push it through your legs, and to put it in the back of the net. Yeah, he was just something different. You're absolutely right about the time, the era of him coming to Birmingham. He just made the whole training ground, Elmdon training ground, which was a great football training ground. He just made it a joy to be around. Yeah.
Did you ever go to the rum run out with Frank? Were you in the social scene with Frank like Keith was?
No, I wasn't. I do remember them. Some of the old the rum runner. Yeah, I've heard. I'd never ever been to the rum runner. But I do remember the times of people going in there and footballers going in there and things like that. But I never got myself too much involved in that. I was a little bit younger than Frank, of course. Yeah. So I'm just proud and glad that, and very, very sad to find out, when this had happened to him. What was it? I don't want to go offline, but it was the did he get the Alzheimer's disease? Or
he did,
yeah, terrible. And then I heard, where I've heard it from, goodness knows, but when Frank knew he had, I'm not saying this is true, but just thinking on back, when Frank knew that he was told he has the Alzheimer's, and he...
Yo, UK! At BetMGM, we give our players sports betting entertainment like nobody's business. Football, horse racing, darts, boxing, tennis, golf, NFL, NBA. You name it, we got it. Offers? You know it. Bet £10 and get £40 in free bets. BetMGM, it's showtime.
New customers only. Exclusions apply. 18 plus. Please gamble responsibly.
The TalkSport Fan Network is proud to be partnering with Lotto from the National Lottery. What would you do if you won £1 million this Wednesday? I mean, would you roll up to the game this weekend in a brand new ride, picking up your mates like some VIP chauffeur? Or better yet, scrap the car altogether and book out the entire first-class train carriage for you and all your mates? I'm talking champagne flowing, your own private waiter, the whole squad living it up on the way to the match. Now that's an entrance. You never know, you may be the next millionaire. Lotto's all about those once-in-a-lifetime moments. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
Made a statement the next day to say, no, I don't have Alzheimer's. And that, just them few words, Paul, summed up Frank Worthington, because he didn't want to, I'm sure at the time, he didn't want to talk about him having Alzheimer's or being very ill, so to speak. Frank just wanted to get on with playing football. He never wanted to make a fuss about anybody. He just loved life. He really did. He loved life. He loved people. He loved his managers. He loved his players. And he just wanted to get on with life. So that little sort of saying is that he didn't want to talk about it, and no, he doesn't have it. He just wanted to probably shy away from it and not want to get involved in anything like that. He just wanted to play football, be with people, score goals, and that was our Frank Worthington.
Absolutely. Have you got any favourite or most memorable match moment of Frank playing in the same team as Frank, where he done something that you just looked at and you just thought, only Frank could do that in a match?
Yeah. Well, no, sadly, no. I have been thinking about. I was thinking about it since I spoke to you earlier today, and then thinking about. I know he scored lots of really good goals, but I don't have any. No, I don't have anything to add to what Frank was. He was just out of this world. He was another. He wasn't your average football player. He was something. He was something very special. And I know he liked a beer. I know he liked to go out at the nightclubs and things like that. But I'm sure Frank could handle it. I mean, if I went out and had a few nights, I'd be a wreck in the morning. I wouldn't be able to go training or nothing like that. But Frank turned up for training every single time. He was always at the front of the warm-ups and things like that. And the coaches, our coaches, shall we say, Jim Smith, I can't remember our coach at the time. They never had a minute's trouble with him. He just loved the game.
Absolutely. You mentioned that he was out of this world, and Frank's life ambition was to see a UFO.
To see
a UFO, an unidentified flying object.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me.
That sums up Frank. And I remember reading in one of them those Focus articles in a Shoot magazine where they'd asked Frank who his most difficult opponent was, and he said, "It's a toss-up between my ex-missus and the tax man." But again,
absolutely,
typical
absolutely.
Frank,
he was a joy. He was a pure joy. We had to. We played all together. Kenny Burns. I keep mentioning Kenny because Kenny was. Ken was great football player, lovely lad, as hard as nails. He didn't want anybody to mess up the training or not work hard in the training and things like that. Ken would be, would have a word with them. But Frank was exactly the same. Frank was he loved his training. He loved life. He loved life. He really, really did. And what he got 8 England caps, which was fantastic, which was fantastic. And he had played with and against lots of other football clubs. That your Huddersfields, the 3 that come to Huddersfield, Leicester, and Bolton. His career was from 1966 to 1991. He did, and he was a maverick. You got it absolutely right, Paul. He is a maverick of football.
Absolutely, and if football was a religion, Frank would be a prophet. Your favourite Elvis track, Joe? Have you got one? Frank's favourite was "It's Now or Never."
Well, yeah, that's yeah. I don't have a favourite one, and I do remember Elvis, of course, but I wasn't a lover of music or nothing like that. Football for me was my, which was my joy, and I'm sure it was Frank's joy. But there was a few other things that Frank enjoyed as well. He liked going out for a pint and things like that. But credit to him, he was adored by everybody. His teammates and his opponents. They all adored Frank Worthington 100%.
Absolutely, and he had a great time in the NASL, didn't he, in America? And I think that they asked him when he come back, what do you prefer, Frank, AstroTurf or grass? And he said, I don't know, I've never smoked AstroTurf. And that was the big fella, wasn't he? Yeah. Always one for the one-liners.
Absolutely,
sharp as a razor.
Well, where did he get the energy from? The energy in football from from 9 o'clock till midday. You need lots of energy. That's just for training, and then you come your matches. Where he got the energy from was just. He was born. I say it now. He must have been born to play football because he was fantastic at it, and he had all this energy. Yeah, me, the likes of me, Kenny Burns, Trevor Francis, and we struggled to keep up with the the standards that Frank put on.
Absolutely, Joe. It's been an absolute pleasure, sir. Can I thank you for your time?
Paul, my pleasure.
Lovely. Thanks, Joe.
Paul, my pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. Hope to speak to you soon.
Will do, Joe. All the best, mate.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Love
Bye-bye.
to you, mate. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Keith Bertschin, how are you, sir?
I'm great, mate. Thanks. I'm enjoying the summer, and it's always nice when you've just come back from Portugal, and I've had all the family, my two girls and their husbands and the granddaughter. So we just had a splendid time, and then I come down to play in a bit of golf with my pal Alan Curbishley, and then we're going to go off and play a little bit of golf in Spain. So I'm just having a bit of a rest at the moment, and a nice relax, and thoroughly enjoying it, Paulie.
Fantastic. You're talking about golf, and you and Alan Curbishley, two Birmingham City legends. Was Frank Worthington a decent golfer?
He was a decent. I mean, he'll tell you he was Rory McIlroy, of course. But no, he liked his golf, but he always enjoyed it, whatever he did, and I think he enjoyed being with the lads as much as anything.
Yeah.
But he certainly enjoyed. I don't think he was 2 or 3 times a week, man. He had the odd game of golf, really enjoyed it, and I think he enjoyed being with the lads more. You know what I mean?
Now, was there a golf culture at Birmingham City? That there was a golf culture at many clubs. Who was the top golf player, and also cricket from memories in the 70s? There was 1 or 2 promo photographs, shall we say, with Birmingham City players playing cricket. Was Frank into that game as well?
Not so much the cricket. He did like the golf.
Yeah.
But. No, I don't think I saw him play cricket. A few of the lads played cricket, and back in our day, they were the 2 main sports, of course.
Absolutely.
And it's all been caught up with all sorts now. But football and cricket were the main things we were growing up with. But no, I mean, Frank liked his golf, and as I say, but mostly he loved his football. And we did. None of us. We all played golf for a bit of fun in them days, and it really was fun. And so we had one sport to really get our heads down and work at, and so golf was just a little bit of light relief, and all the boys together again, but in a different little atmosphere, which was quite good.
Absolutely. You mentioned that you've come back off holiday and you're going
Mm,
on holiday with Alan to have a little bit of golf. You're going to get a little bit of
sure.
golf taken in. Did you ever go on holiday with Frank? Did you ever room with Frank when you were when Birmingham were playing away?
I'm sure. I'm sure we all went away. I think we might have got promotion. I think we went away. I think it might have been Portugal, as it happens. And yeah, Frank was on that trip. But of course, you could be anywhere with Frank, and you thought you was abroad. You know what I mean? We could be walking up Solihull High Street, and we think we're in Vegas. So I mean, yeah, I remember when he first arrived, and we went just for something to eat, and I thought, oh, he is so funny, this bloke, and he was so laid back, and occasionally I think you can get a little bit wound up with the football because, of course, it means everything to us, but he could relax us all, and I remember Alan was still living at my house at the time when Frank pulls up and tells us that he's booked a table in Solihull, Bobby Browne's, and come on, we've got to go. And I says, has he forgotten we're playing Chelsea tomorrow? And he says, no, I haven't. He says, come on, we'll be home by 8:30. And to be quite honest, we went, we had a lovely meal. We were back for 8:30 when we went and beat Chelsea. It was in midweek.
Yes.
I don't know what it was, 3-1, 4-1, something like that.
5-1, we absolutely
5-1, was
hammered
it?
them. Yeah.
Yeah. And he just taught us another way to relax before a game, rather than sitting in my house panicking, hoping we're going to do all right the next day. So, we learned from him all sorts of different things, and I wasn't going to say that we'd go out every night before a game. Of course we wouldn't, but just to go and relax and think about something else and do nothing wrong. We weren't drinking. We just had a nice bite to eat, all relaxed, and then we're back for 8:30, and we gave a fairly good performance the next day, and that was probably down to Frank.
You gave one of the greatest performances I've ever seen at St Andrews that day. That was all down to Bobby Browne's and the steak. He did have a steak named after him. Was it in that restaurant?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I would not be surprised because, honestly, he used to walk up that Solihull High Street and you did think he was in Vegas, He'd have his glasses on and he was about 6'4". No, I loved him, I did. And, he was a big influence on certainly me and Alan. We remember him extremely fondly, as all the boys do. Dylan and Mark Dennis, they all really thought the world of Frank. And to be quite honest, why wouldn't you?
Absolutely. The music scene was really vibrant in Birmingham in the late 70s. ELO, Steve Gibbons, etc., etc. Frank was really into his music. Jeff Lynne was a big fan of Birmingham City, of course, as well.
Yeah.
Tell me about the music scene that Frank was involved in and the Rum Runner as well. He was pretty prolific up there as well, wasn't he?
Yeah. Who was not Jeff, but the other musician you mentioned,
Stevie Gibbons, and we had Stevie Winwood as well, of course.
Steve, I think it was it say Steve Gibbons?
Yeah.
I think Frank had got quite pally with him, and I know he'd seen him quite a lot, and obviously through Trevor, when Trevor was at football, he'd introduced me to the boys at ELO, and I still see Bev quite regular, and obviously when Jeff was here, I could go around and either fish because he had a lake. I could fish in his lake, or go down and listen and rehearse. And I was living the dream really, because not only was he, a fantastic musician, he was a really nice fella, and he loved his football, and we combined a bit of both when I used to go around there. So I consider myself extremely lucky, and it was only, I don't know, I can't remember the last time he was at the NEC, but we went, and it was just as if you turn the clocks back 40 years, and he was exactly the same. He was fabulous, and as did the whole band were, and I think he'll always be right up there for me, and Frank as well, because he was in and out the club all the time, and we all know that he is, a big Birmingham fan, is Jeff, and he certainly left an influence, certainly on me, and I know Frank had the utmost respect for him as well.
Absolutely. What was it like a night out at the Rum Runner with Frank?
Quite lively, but he was kind of quite calm, really, and he was always good fun, and he liked to laugh and a joke, and many times, like home and abroad, he was just quietly like the life and soul, and he'd always do something, and he was very well thought of by the lads, and he could almost do whatever he wanted, and all the lads would just follow him. He was kind of a leader, really, rather than a follower, and we all sort of followed him.
I don't think there's any player since that's been able to follow Frank. Frank was unique. He was a one-off. He was different from the rest. He actually met his wife, didn't he, Carol, at the Rum Runner?
Yeah, that's right. And he settled down, and they thought, obviously they was great, and but he was still great with the lads,
yeah.
And but everybody settles down, and he was no exception. So it still meant that when he was with us, he was really, really funny, and he'd always make us laugh. But the one thing I loved about him more than anything, he did love his football. He would probably be the last one in training, but he was always the last one to leave.
Yeah.
And so with all the carry on that went with him, the one thing he did do, he really, really did love his football. I've got to be honest, and as I say, he'd be the last one off the training ground, and he'd just look at you as if to say, "Haven't we had the best day today?" And that was him, really. Every day, was the best day in his life.
As a forward, Keith, when you were training and you watched certain things that Frank did, not just on the ball but off the ball, his body movement, his control,
sure.
What did you take from watching Frank? Because he must have improved you as a player, as well as he must have improved every player that ever played with him.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, listen, I was never going to quite be Frank. I mean, the one great thing for us was that, his technical ability was fantastic. The ball stuck to him like glue. But then when the ball had to go forward, it might be a little bit more easier for me to get the other side. And so we formed, quite a nice partnership where, as soon as he was dropping it back to someone, I was on my bike. And we sort of combined quite well like that, and the fact that, we thought a lot about each other, I think only made us work harder together and for the team, so they were the sort of memories I have of Frank. And I'll never forget, we were playing down at Charlton, and I think I might have scored. I think we were 1-0 up, and I remember I'd got through, and I hit one, and it just sort of skimmed the bar, and then they blew for half time, and we're walking off, and a lump of mud's hit me on the head, and I looked round, and it was him. He'd thrown it at me. I said, "What?"
And there it is, that's as good as it gets on this stage. Nissan Townstar EV strikes again. It's an unstoppable van, unstoppable.
Just fantastic. You can actually see the Pro Pilot technology in action. Effortless parallel parking.
It moves with all the confidence that comes with a 5-year warranty.
And with a bench full of all-star van experts, there's real strength in depth here.
That's all-star quality.
Search Nissan Townstar EV and visit your local all-star van centre to see for yourself.
Terms and conditions apply. 5 years or 100,000 miles, whichever comes first.
ProPilot is an advanced driver assist technology. Driver's responsibility to stay alert, drive safely, and control vehicle at all times.
And he says, "You could have passed to me then." I says, "Well, I was a little bit unlucky, it just scraped the crossbar." And he said to me, "Look," he says, "you're scoring goals. I need a goal." And I went, "Hang on." I said, "You're Frank Worthington." And he just laughed, to be fair. He did laugh. But in a way, he was just sort of saying, look, sometimes I need a bit of an hand, you know what I mean? And I realised that sometimes he was like all of us, you could do with a leg up from time to time, where we thought he was just, unbreakable. So, I was always alert then. If I could get him the ball, I would do, So, but it just was nice that, even he was saying, look, I need a bit of an hand here. And I thought, wow, I didn't feel so bad then if I felt a bit down about, how I played in the game, because if it could bother Frank, then it could bother all of us, So, and it wasn't so bad, to feel disappointed if you hadn't done as well as you wanted to, So you learn something all the time with him, thinking he's just this superior, confident kid, which he was, but occasionally he sort of, cried out to you for a bit of help himself occasionally, and I would never make that mistake again, and we would try and put each other, a ball on a plate, just because we wanted to both do well.
I guess being out of this world in terms of his talent, he was certainly human as well. He scored a brace against Nottingham Forest. Talk me through that, because that was a fantastic brace against Peter Shilton, wasn't he? One of the greatest goalkeepers.
Of course, and I think his first goal was a decent shot. It might have been his left foot. I mean, listen, I can't remember my own goals, let alone somebody else's. But I do remember his second one, because I've seen him. He's gone on his left, and I think, here he goes, and he's about 25 yards out, and then he cut back on his right, and I thought, oh, he must going to pass this now, and all of a sudden he's hit it, and Shilton ain't moved, and it's a goal. And that was, we were walking back to the centre circle. I said, what's just happened there? I.e., using your right foot. And he just looked at me and he went, special occasions, son. And we were laughing like two school kids walking back to the halfway line, and we're playing like if they weren't the European champions, they were going to be, or they might have been the European champions. I'm thinking, wow, I love playing with it. And so we would take it fairly seriously, but it could lighten up at any time, and he weren't just like that with me, he was like that with everyone, and that's why he was so well thought of,
Absolutely. What are the magic moments do you remember that Frank produced in a Blues kit? And as I say, it doesn't need to be on match day, it could be in training, it could be anywhere.
Oh, Paul, I think it was just the way he could naturally hold people off, control the ball from what it might have come 15 yards or it might have come 40 yards, and he just got hold of it, and then he'd get it on his left foot and he'd sweep it out sort of 30 or 40 yards out to either the left winger or, Mark Dennis, careering up the pitch, and he just struck it so beautiful, and you just knew every time that he had a little look and one or two were making runs, you knew he'd land the ball straight in front of him.
Yeah.
And he got us playing all the time, and we're always on the attack, because he's not normally, it's one of his passes that put us in a really good position to go and attack the box.
And he was a very modest man as well, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. And he could have the occasional little dry laughter when he'd done something really good. He could wink and push me, and I'd go, all right, I know that was good. That was really, really good. And he'd just push me and laugh, and like he'd turn into about 9-year-old, you know what I mean? And so they're the things that I kind of remember and treasure. I was very fortunate to play with many, many good centre forwards. But for me, Frank was right up there with the best of them.
Absolutely. What's the first thing that would come to your mind if I just said Frank Worthington?
Fun. Whether we're at the training ground or I've gone round his house or he'd come round mine. He was a dedicated footballer. Yeah. He loved his football, but he also felt that you had to relax and have a bit of fun. And he was always larking about and just making you laugh, and to be honest, making you feel glad you're alive. You know what I mean? I really liked him. It was probably 2-3 years. But while talking about him, it sounds like, he could be sitting right next to me,
Is there anything that you could say that would surprise us about Frank Worthington? What's the one thing that you discovered that you didn't know about Frank before you met him?
Well, I think it was fairly well known, his love of his music, and particularly Elvis. I think I was pleasantly surprised that he was everything I hoped he'd be, before I met him. And he was everything and more, if I was honest. I would like to think that I'd have always gone that extra yard for him. And obviously, while we played together, I always tried to.
Absolutely. And finally, Keith, your favourite Elvis track?
Oh, don't. Well, he knew them all, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
He knew them all, and he would sing them all. I don't know if I had a favourite, but he would have hundreds up his sleeve, and he done a fair Elvis, to be fair to him. And as we're talking now, I can see him, and he's coming in training, and he'd be like mumbling and fumbling along, singing a little song, and it would always be Elvis. So that's how I like to not one particular song. It was just the medley of songs he had, and he was always singing one of Elvis's songs, and he was the closest I've ever got to Elvis, I'll tell you that.
his favourite, Frank's favourite Elvis track was "It's Now or Never." And
It's Now or Never,
His second
okay, I
favourite
could
was
go with
Surrender.
that.
But the track that I would identify with Frank is "The Wonder of You," because you look at Frank and he was a wondrous character, and certainly too good to be forgotten, and never will be, Keith.
Oh, well, I have to say, not perhaps since I met Frank, but certainly it was an influence. But I always liked all the old Elvis films, Blue Hawaii and all that sort of stuff. I don't know why I liked him, but I really did. And then he turned up, and it was like he'd been sent from God, because he was the nearest thing I was going to get to Elvis. And he was just so much fun, and he made all of us younger ones, at the time anyway, feel really, really good. And also he allowed us to express ourselves and play and give us confidence and encouragement. And fond memories of him, and I miss him.
Absolutely. Can I thank you so much for your time, Keith? Enjoy your holiday with Alan. Thank you so much, Keith.
Paul, it's always a pleasure, pal. It's always a pleasure.
At BetMGM, we know how to put on a show. So we don't just do offers, we do golden offers like this.
MGM Millions, our supersized jackpot where right now you could win over £21 million.
Get ready for the golden era in online casino. BetMGM, it's showtime.
Minimum 10p game stake. Terms and conditions apply. 18 plus. Please gamble responsibly.
The TalkSport Fan Network is proud to be partnering with Lotto from the National Lottery. Make this Wednesday one to remember. You've got to be in it to win it. Lotto is the original millionaire maker, where you could become the next millionaire. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over.
This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.